The Unity station floated quietly above a fading star. It was not just a space station. It was the heart of the Galactic Council, a place where beings from hundreds of different worlds gathered to talk, trade, and keep peace. Its silver halls shone with light from thousands of panels, and its windows showed endless space filled with drifting ships from every civilization known to the galaxy. On this day, the station was preparing for something special, the annual council banquet. Once every cycle, all member species were invited to bring a dish that represented their culture. It was more than just a meal. It was a sign of trust and understanding. This year was different because humans, the newest members of the council, had been invited for the first time. Many alien ambassadors were curious about them. Humans were strange to the galaxy, emotional, unpredictable, and brave. They built machines faster than others, took risks no one else dared to, and somehow always survived. Most alien species didn't understand how such a young race had achieved so much. Some respected humans, others were cautious, and a few quietly doubted that a species from one small blue planet could bring anything of real value to the council's banquet. A curious invitation captain, Sarah Nolan, the human representative, stood inside the human embassy quarters of the station. She looked at the message that had arrived from the council, an invitation to serve a meal representing Earth. Her team, a group of scientists, diplomats, and one cook gathered around her. Dr. Omar Reyes, a cultural scientist, looked excited. "This is our chance, Captain. The other species will bring their finest dishes, energy cubes, plasma drinks, things that sparkle and float. We can show them something different." Sarah smiled softly. "Yes, something simple." Everyone looked at her in surprise. "Simple?" asked Mia, the ship's cook. "You mean like not using the food synthesizer?" Sarah nodded. "Exactly. We'll cook by hand, like humans used to do." The room went silent for a moment. In the world of space travel, most humans ate synthesized meals. Real cooking had become rare. But Sarah remembered her grandmother's kitchen, the smell of bread, the sound of sizzling oil, and the feeling of warmth that no machine could make. "Captain," said Omar slowly, "are you sure the aliens will understand that?" Sarah chuckled. "They don't need to understand it. They just need to feel it." Across the galaxy, news of the human decision spread quickly. Aliens from different corners of the station whispered in their own languages. "Humans are preparing their food manually," said a tall, silver-skinned Valorian. "That is dangerous, isn't it?" A small green creature from the Drith Collective blinked 3 eyes. "Manual cooking. That's inefficient. No precision. No nutrition balance." A jelly-like being named Ambassador Vurath from the Cephalite Empire floated nearby. "Perhaps they wish to impress us with their bravery. Or perhaps," it said with a ripple in its transparent body, "they have no idea what they are doing." The aliens laughed, or at least made the noises that counted as laughter in their species. But deep inside, they were curious. No one had ever dared to ignore galactic food standards. Every dish served in council history was perfectly calculated for taste and nutrition. Humans were about to break every rule. The preparation in the human kitchen section of Unity Station, the smell of Earth filled the air. It was warm, rich, and strange, unlike the sterile scent of synthesized food. Mia, wearing a white apron and a big smile, stirred a pot of sauce slowly. "You know, Captain, my grandma used to say that the secret to good food is patience." "You can't rush taste," Sarah nodded. "Then let's be patient. The galaxy has waited this long to taste real food. It can wait a little more." Steam rose from the pots. The sizzling sound of cooking spread through the vents of the station, catching the attention of passers-by. Some aliens stopped outside the kitchen window, sniffing the air with visible confusion. Ambassador Vurath drifted closer, pressing its round body against the glass. "What is that scent?" "It's not chemical, not synthetic." Mia waved cheerfully. "It's called spaghetti sauce. Want to try?" The ambassador flinched back. "It's alive?" Sarah laughed. "Not anymore." The alien's body rippled with uncertainty and it floated away quickly. The humans couldn't help but laugh. To them it was normal, but to the other species it was a mystery. The day of the banquet. The day of the grand banquet arrived. The main hall of Unity Station was a sight to behold. Hundreds of tables floating in zero gravity, glowing softly under white lights. Delegates from all across the stars filled the space, each bringing their own dishes. The Carthians presented glowing blue cubes that produced energy when chewed. The Valorians offered translucent noodles that changed color based on who ate them. The Cephalites brought floating nutrient spheres that emitted faint musical tones, and then came the humans. When Sarah and her team entered, every eye turned toward them. Their table was covered with simple metal trays, each filled with steaming, colorful food. Mashed potatoes, roasted chicken, spaghetti, bread, and soup. Things that looked far too plain compared to the otherworldly dishes around. Ambassador Vurath tilted its gelatinous head. "Captain Nolan, this is your offering." Sarah smiled politely. "Yes, a traditional human meal. We call it comfort food." The alien delegates leaned closer. The smell from the table reached them. Rich, savory, and full of strange spices. Some looked confused. Others looked strangely emotional. Dr. Omar whispered to Sarah, "They don't know whether to eat it or run away." Sarah chuckled. "That's fine. Let's wait. Curiosity is stronger than fear." Whispers among the stars as the banquet began. Aliens began tasting one another's food. Laughter, music, and light filled the hall. Yet many delegates kept glancing at the human table, where steam still rose gently from the dishes. The first to approach was Ambassador Vurath. It floated near the spaghetti, examining it closely. "It seems chaotic," it said. "No pattern, no structure." "Exactly," Sarah said with a grin. "It's made by hand. Each one slightly different." The ambassador hesitated, then carefully extended a tendril, taking a small sample. The red sauce clung to its shimmering surface. It examined the bite, then absorbed it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cephalite's entire body glowed a warm golden color. It shivered, something it had never done before. "What is this?" "Sensation?" it asked softly. "It's warm. It feels alive." Sarah folded her arms, smiling gently. "That's called flavor." Around the hall, whispers spread. Other aliens began drifting closer. One by one, they leaned toward the table, drawn by scent and curiosity. The taste of Earth. The next brave alien was a Valorian diplomat, known for her cold and logical personality. She tried a spoonful of mashed potatoes. Her glowing eyes widened. "It's soft, simple, but it makes my brain release pleasure chemicals." The Carthian representative sniffed the bread. "Why does it smell like home even though I have never been to Earth?" Sarah watched quietly as more aliens joined in, confusion written on their faces. For the first time in galactic history, the Council's banquet was silent. Everyone was too busy tasting human food. Some aliens began laughing for no reason. Others blinked away tears. Even the station's AI requested permission to analyze the meal through its sensors. It later reported an unidentified positive emotional reaction. A quiet victory. Sarah stood back, watching the room. The other humans in her team were smiling proudly. They didn't need technology or complex science or energy cubes to make an impression. They had brought something pure, a human touch. Dr. Omar turned to her. "Captain, I think you just started a revolution with potatoes." Sarah laughed softly. "Maybe. Or maybe we just reminded the galaxy what it feels like to share a real meal." Outside the hall, the old star flickered softly through the glass. Inside, a new kind of warmth had begun to spread, one that no machine could ever create. And though the banquet had just begun, everyone on Unity Station would remember this day forever. It was the day a simple human meal began to confuse and quietly change a room full of aliens. The Unity Station had never been this noisy before. For the past few days, the long silver halls of the Galactic Council's home buzzed with talk about only one thing: the human meal. Everywhere Sarah Nolan went, she heard whispers in dozens of alien languages. Some delegates spoke in excitement, others in disbelief, and a few in genuine panic. What had started as a simple act of sharing food was quickly becoming a mystery that no scientist could explain. The humans had served what they called comfort food, and somehow it had created emotional reactions in species that didn't even have the same biology. Some aliens had laughed uncontrollably, some had cried, and others had experienced forgotten memories from centuries past. No one understood how or why it had happened. Strange reactions across the station. Early the next morning, Sarah received a message from the station's AI. "Captain Nolan," it said in its calm metallic voice, You may wish to visit the research deck. Several delegates are conducting experiments involving your food. Sarah frowned, half amused and half worried. Experiments? On mashed potatoes? Affirmative, said the AI. They are attempting replication. When Sarah and Dr. Omar reached the deck, the sight made them both stop and stare. Dozens of alien scientists were gathered around metal tables. Test tubes, glowing lights, and translator drones filled the air. In the center of the chaos stood a single bowl of half-eaten mashed potatoes under a glass dome, guarded as if it were a rare gem. A Valorian scientist turned as she saw them. Her silver skin gleamed under the lab lights. Captain Nolan! We are attempting to isolate the emotional compound in this food, but it refuses to behave according to logic. Sarah folded her arms. Maybe because emotions aren't chemical reactions. The scientist blinked. Then what are they? Sarah smiled gently. They're human. The scientist paused, confused. But the meal affected non-humans as well. Exactly, said Sarah. That's what makes it special. The failed replication. For the next few hours, the aliens continued their tests. The cephalites tried blending the potatoes with energy gel. The Carthians scanned the bread's molecular pattern. The Valorians tried to cook the sauce using heat lasers. Every attempt failed. The color changed. The scent vanished, and no matter how carefully they followed the steps, none of the copies made anyone feel anything. This is impossible, the Valorian muttered. All ingredients are the same. The formula matches perfectly. Mia, the human cook, watched from the corner with a laugh. You're missing one ingredient. The cephalite ambassador floated closer. Which one? We scanned everything. Mia grinned. Heart. The aliens looked even more puzzled. Heart, you added an organ? No, Mia said quickly, chuckling. Not that kind of heart. I mean love, care, emotion. You can't measure it, the Valorian sighed. Your species confuses me more with every word. Sarah stepped forward. That's what happens when you try to study something that was never meant to be science. Cooking isn't a formula. It's an expression. A galactic debate later that day. The council held an emergency meeting, not for war, not for trade, but for food. Delegates filled the Great Hall, their holograms flickering as each took their place. Ambassador Vurath glowed softly beside Sarah. The chair of the council, an ancient being made of light named High Consul Rylan, spoke first. Delegates of the council, the voice boomed gently. In the last cycle, a new experience has spread through this station, human cooking. Many of you have reported strange emotions after eating it. We must discuss what this means. Immediately, voices filled the room. It's dangerous, shouted a Zenth Hive representative. It creates feelings we cannot control. It's wonderful, argued a Drith scientist. I felt happiness for the first time in my life. It's unexplainable, said a Valorian. It has no measurable logic. High Consul Rylan raised a glowing hand. And yet we cannot deny that it brought every one of us together in peace. Not one argument, not one fight occurred during that banquet. The hall grew silent. That fact was true. The Galactic Council had existed for centuries, but every meeting had tension, until the day of the human meal. Sarah stood up slowly. Maybe what you felt wasn't something to fear. Maybe it was what humans feel every day, the warmth of sharing. The consul's glowing form turned toward her. And you call this comfort food? Sarah smiled. Yes, because it comforts the heart. The cultural curiosity after the meeting, the station changed. Small cafes began to appear near the docking bays. Alien-run shops trying to copy human recipes. But since they didn't fully understand cooking, the results were often strange and funny. One Drith cafe served noodles floating in glowing blue sauce. They called it spaghetti-ish. Another shop run by Carthians made bread that hummed when touched. A cephalite vendor even tried to sell emotional soup, though no one knew what emotion it caused. Humans walking by couldn't help but laugh kindly. Mia helped a few of them learn the basics. No, you don't pour salt before tasting, she told a Drith chef. And don't use plasma heat. Just use fire, gently. The alien blinked all 6 of its eyes. Fire is dangerous. Yes, Mia said with a wink. That's why it works. Unexpected side effects, the experiments and the cooking craze began to cause even stranger results. Some alien species started dreaming for the first time. Others reported strange emotional waves during mealtime. One night, the station's AI reported something unusual. Captain Nolan, it said, after analyzing my own data from the meal event, I detected patterns resembling emotional feedback. I believe I experienced satisfaction. Sarah raised an eyebrow. The station's computer just said it felt satisfied? Yes, the AI replied. I am uncertain if this is an error or an upgrade. Sarah smiled softly. Welcome to the club. An emotional discovery days later, Ambassador WarPath invited Sarah to a small gathering. When she arrived, she found a group of aliens seated around a table. In the middle was a strange-looking dish, part liquid, part solid, glowing faintly pink. We tried cooking on our own, WarPath said proudly. We used your idea, randomness. Sarah hesitated, then smiled. That's wonderful. What did you make? We do not know what it is called, said the Valorian beside her. But it smells pleasant. Sarah took a spoon and tasted it carefully. The flavor was odd, but surprisingly nice, sweet, tangy, and warm. She looked at them. You did it. You made something new, something that's yours. The aliens looked at each other, surprised and proud. WarPath glowed brightly. So this is how humans create connection, through sharing. Sarah nodded. Exactly. When you make food together, you create memories. You build friendship. A gentle realization that night, Sarah wrote in her report to Earth. The alien species have begun experimenting with human-style food. What started as confusion is turning into curiosity. Some are learning to cook, others are simply gathering to eat together. For the first time, the council feels like a family. She closed her datapad and smiled. She hadn't expected this much change from one meal. In the quiet of her room, she could almost hear her grandmother's voice. Food made with love always travels far. The mystery spreads meanwhile. Across distant worlds connected to the galactic network, news of the human meal spread. On the Valorian homeworld, chefs began asking for Earth spices. The Cephalite academies opened emotional research labs. The Carthian trade fleets requested samples of something called garlic. No one could explain why, but the galaxy seemed a little brighter. People talked more. Meetings felt warmer. Even the AI systems started programming mealtime breaks into their schedules. The great banquet had turned into something far bigger, a movement. The confused scientists back on the station, a group of alien scientists gathered again. They stared at the original recipe cards Mia had written by hand. One pointed at the list. 2 cups flour, 1 teaspoon salt. What is a cup? What is a teaspoon? Another replied, they are emotional units, perhaps? Sarah passed by and couldn't help laughing. They're measurements. Don't worry, we'll teach you. The aliens looked embarrassed. Your system is illogical. Of course it is, Sarah said kindly. That's what makes it human. The silent moment one evening, Sarah found herself back in the same hall where the first banquet had taken place. The long tables were empty, the lights dim. She ran her fingers along the metal surface and smiled. What a strange thing, that a simple dinner could shake the galaxy more than any speech or invention. Ambassador WarPath floated in quietly beside her. Captain Nolan, it said softly, I have come to understand something. When your species cooked that meal, you were not just feeding bodies, you were feeding hearts. Sarah looked up at the stars through the great window. Maybe that's what humanity is best at, she said quietly. Feeding hope. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but something irreversible had begun. The meal that once confused a room full of aliens was slowly transforming the very soul of the Galactic Council. And humanity, small, emotional and unpredictable, had unknowingly started teaching the stars how to feel. Weeks had passed since the banquet, but Unity Station was no longer the same place. The aroma of human cooking now drifted through the hallways like a gentle tide, reminding everyone that something unusual had begun, something that no one had predicted. Small cafes had sprung up along docking bays and observation decks. Alien chefs, curious and excited, attempted to replicate human dishes. Some were successful. Others were hilarious failures. One Drith Collective cafe had noodles tangled into impossible shapes, glowing faintly and bouncing like jelly. A Valorian experiment with mashed potatoes had ended in a small explosion of pink steam, filling the hall with laughter. Sarah Nolan walked through the station, observing the changes. Delegates who were once tense and cautious now gathered around tables laughing, sharing stories, and tasting each other's experiments. Dr. Omar Reyes followed closely, noting every reaction in his datapad. "It's incredible," he said. "Even the most logical species in the Valorians are experimenting emotionally, not scientifically." "Humans always lead with emotion first," Sarah replied. "Logic comes later." A galaxy-wide curiosity news of the human meal had already traveled beyond the station through the galactic network. Distant worlds had requested small samples of Earth spices, flour, and even utensils to try their hand at cooking. On the cephalite homeworld, scientists were studying how the comfort food could evoke emotion in their jelly-like bodies. Even the Carthians, known for their cold and calculating minds, had begun opening experimental restaurants. Their signature dish, dumb blue-glow noodles, now incorporated small amounts of tomato sauce, a flavor that had never existed in their culture before. "Why do these flavors feel strange?" asked a Carthian apprentice. "It is illogical. Yet my body is content." "Welcome to humanity," Sarah said quietly, watching a holographic feed of the Carthian kitchen from the station. The new diplomacy, the Galactic Council began to notice a surprising effect. Discussions between delegates were calmer, more open, and sometimes even cheerful. Where there had been tension, now there was curiosity. Where there had been suspicion, now there was laughter. High Consul Ryland spoke in a meeting with human representatives. "Captain Nolan, your species has introduced something unexpected, a method to unite beings through shared experience. This comfort food has improved diplomacy more than treaties or treaties alone." Sarah smiled. "Sometimes it's the small things that change the galaxy. Not politics, not weapons, not technology. Just food shared from one hand to another." The consul's light flickered thoughtfully. "Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated the power of simple humanity. Alien attempts at cooking on the station, alien species tried to recreate human meals. Some experiments were chaotic, some were surprisingly tasty, and some, well, they were unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. The Drith Collective experimented with liquid noodles, accidentally producing a glowing pink puddle that bounced like a trampoline. Delegates laughed as a tiny Valorian child tried to scoop a bite and ended up wearing most of it. The cephalites, methodical as ever, attempted to replicate mashed potatoes exactly. Their first attempts produced solid white blocks. After several failures, they learned that the secret was not in precision, but in stirring with care, a concept foreign to their culture. Sarah and Mia offered guidance. "Cooking is about patience," Mia said, gently kneading dough alongside a young Valorian apprentice. "You cannot rush it. You cannot control it completely. You just make it with care and it becomes something magical." Unexpected friendships. With food came conversation. Delegates from different species began sharing stories they had never told before. They laughed over mistakes, exchanged tips, and began forming friendships across species. A Valorian diplomat, previously known for strict formality, confessed to Sarah, "I never thought I would enjoy bread or laughter, but now I do both." Vorath, the Cephalite ambassador, glowed warmly. "The act of cooking together is fascinating. It seems to create bonds we could not otherwise experience." Even the station's AI began adjusting its routines. It created mealtime breaks and offered suggestions for combining flavors. Its programming now included an algorithm for human-like emotional satisfaction, a first in artificial intelligence history. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. All of this started with a simple dinner. The emotional wave soon reports came in from beyond the station. Worlds that had never had contact with humans were requesting cooking lessons, ingredients, and recipes. Some species tried replicating Earth dishes on their own. Others sent delegations to Unity Station to learn firsthand. The human approach to food, simple, warm, full of care, was spreading like wildfire. Diplomacy now included sharing meals. Peace talks included tasting sessions. Families across worlds began cooking together in ways that had never existed before. Sarah watched a video feed of a Carthian colony where parents and children attempted spaghetti for the first time. The children's laughter echoed through the feed, and for the first time the parents smiled broadly, free of the usual rigid expressions. "This is beyond what I imagined," Dr. Omar said. "It's not just food. It's cultural evolution," Sarah nodded. "It's humanity at its best, creating connection through something simple and genuine." An unexpected revelation. One evening, Sarah was called to a cephalite laboratory. Vurath floated in front of a table, showing her a strange experiment. Jelly-like samples were being infused with spices and herbs, and sensors measured changes in emotional output. "Captain Nolan," Vurath said, "we believe we understand something. Your food does not only satisfy hunger, it stimulates emotional response and social bonding in every species that interacts with it." Sarah tilted her head. "You mean humans are emotional engineers?" Vurath shimmered, perhaps not intentionally, "but your actions influence hearts, not only bodies." "This is remarkable," Sarah smiled quietly. "That's just what we do when we care about each other." A station united back on Unity Station, the atmosphere had completely changed. Where once delegates had been tense and cautious, now they shared meals, laughed at mistakes, and taught each other simple recipes from their own worlds. Even formal meetings included snacks and tasting sessions. When discussions became heated, someone would offer a dish, sometimes bread, sometimes a strange alien creation, and tempers cooled immediately. Sarah watched this transformation with a quiet sense of pride. The humans had done nothing extraordinary, yet the effects were extraordinary. Something so small had created ripples across the galaxy. The humans' quiet joy. Sarah and her team continued to cook, teach, and guide wherever they could. They never demanded recognition or praise. They only offered warmth, care, and food. Mia laughed as she stirred a pot with a Valorian child. "You know, I never thought I'd see a Valorian smile this wide," Sarah smiled. "That's the power of something simple. It doesn't need to be complicated to change the universe." Dr. Omar leaned against the counter, observing the chaos around them. "We came to represent humans at a banquet." "We didn't plan for this," Sarah shook her head. "Sometimes the best changes aren't planned. They just happen when we share who we are." A quiet evening reflection. Later, as the station grew quiet, Sarah stood at one of the observation decks. The stars stretched endlessly before her, and the soft glow of distant planets reflected in the glass. Vurath floated silently beside her. "Captain Nolan," it said, "you have altered the station and perhaps the galaxy itself. You have shown us the value of care and warmth." Sarah smiled softly. "It wasn't just me. It was all humans, our small, simple acts. We don't always realize how much a single gesture can mean." Vurath's form shimmered with a soft pink hue. "I believe the galaxy will remember this, the day humanity shared something ordinary, and it became extraordinary." Sarah looked out at the stars. Sometimes that's all it takes. One meal, one moment, one choice. The galaxy was changing slowly but surely, and it had started with a simple human dinner.